In a galaxy fractured by centuries of endless war, empires rose and fell like waves on a storm-tossed ocean. Planets were scarred, entire civilizations teetered on the brink, and peace was more than fragile. It was almost mythical. Yet somewhere amidst the chaos, a chance for balance remained. A fragile hope that something could hold the universe from tearing itself apart. She was a diplomat, part of a race renowned for intellect, logic, and unshakable composure. Her people had survived through negotiation, through subtlety and wisdom. But this mission tested her in ways she had never imagined. For the first time, she had to rely not on her own species' ingenuity, but on a human, a species she had been taught to view as impulsive, reckless, and fragile. He was that human. To her, humans were small, brief-lived, and often illogical. Yet there was a spark in them, a stubbornness, a kind of courage that no amount of alien technology could replicate. She had been assigned to secure peace, and the Council had determined that a union, marriage between her and this human, was the best guarantee that hostilities could be ended. It was a choice of duty, not of heart, and she reminded herself of that constantly. The first weeks were quiet, deceptively calm. She observed him in simulations, expecting mediocrity, even failure, but each day she saw glimpses of something extraordinary. He moved with instinctive precision, adapting instantly to any challenge. Where strategies faltered, he improvised. Where danger struck, he acted without hesitation. In one simulation, he faced a squad of virtual enemies alone. By the end, the program that was designed to push him to the limits lay in ruin, dismantled by his calculated, lethal mastery. It was not arrogance or cruelty that made him remarkable. It was his humanity. Even in simulations, he protected civilians, mitigated harm, and inspired those around him to rise to challenges they had once thought impossible. She watched, uneasy admiration building as the human defied every expectation. Then the war escalated. Fleets collided above shattered planets, fire and metal raining across skies. Armies clashed on devastated worlds, their battles echoing through space. And she, who had married him merely to secure peace, found herself witnessing feats no one could have imagined. The first true test came on the ocean world of Vera 3. Alien forces had landed, confident, superior, armed with weapons designed to crush human resistance in hours. He stepped forward, unarmored by myth or legend, yet every movement radiated a calm, controlled power. Soldiers followed his command without hesitation, inspired by his presence. Enemy squads fell, overwhelmed not by numbers or weapons, but by his unmatched ingenuity and speed. It was not brute force alone that made him terrifying. He anticipated attacks, adapted to every new threat, and countered with a strategy that seemed almost supernatural. Where alien commanders relied on overwhelming technology and brute power, he relied on courage, intuition, and the relentless will of a human unwilling to surrender. She saw him save civilians trapped under collapsing structures, neutralize siege weapons meant to destroy entire cities, and face monstrous commanders with nothing but his skill and determination. Each victory seemed impossible, yet each time he rose again, bloodied but unbowed, commanding awe not through fear but through a combination of heroism and quiet humility. But the human's brilliance was not limited to combat. Amidst the chaos, he laughed, shared stories of Earth, described sunsets, oceans, and moments of simple beauty she could barely comprehend. These fleeting glimpses of normalcy, juxtaposed against the backdrop of death and destruction, made him more extraordinary still. She realized that his power was amplified not just by skill or courage, but by a deep compassion, a humanity that refused to let despair dominate the universe. The war reached a crescendo on the frozen planet of Nivara. Enemy forces unleashed a colossal siege weapon, capable of obliterating entire cities in a single strike. Fleets faltered, generals debated endlessly, and panic threatened to paralyze every allied force. He acted without hesitation. Alone, or appearing so, he navigated a hailstorm of destruction, countered impossibly precise attacks, and destroyed the weapon before it could fire. Thousands of lives were saved by a single human who defied the impossible. Then came the ultimate confrontation, the enemy's supreme commander, a towering figure armed with technology and strength designed to crush planets. The human faced him directly. Hours of combat unfolded like a storm, each movement precise, each strike anticipating the opponent's next. She watched, breathless, as he endured blows that would have killed any other warrior. Yet rose each time, relentless, unstoppable, yet humane. When the final strike landed, it was simple, perfect, and devastating. The enemy commander fell. Remaining forces retreated in chaos. She ran to him as the battlefield stilled, seeing him battered, bruised, but alive. One human, who she had relied on for peace, had changed the course of entire wars. As the dust settled, she spoke, her voice trembling. I relied on you, but I never imagined this what you did. It's beyond anything I could have believed. He smiled faintly, exhaustion etched on his face. It's not about belief. It's about action. Doing what's right even when it seems impossible. That's what humans do. That's what I did for peace, for life, for everyone who couldn't fight for themselves. She realized then that trust had become admiration. Admiration had become respect. And respect had evolved into a bond forged in the crucible of war. Humans, she understood now, were underestimated not because of weakness, but because no one could comprehend the strength born of mortality, courage, and unyielding will. As fleets drifted silently in orbit and survivors tended to the wounded, she stood beside him. Together they watched the galaxy breathe again. Peace was hard-won, fragile yet possible. And she, who had relied on a human for peace, had seen him defy the impossible, wielding not only skill and power but courage, heart, and the essence of humanity itself. The war had ended, but its legacy, the heroism, resilience, and humanity of a single soul, would echo across the stars forever. The aftermath of the first major battle left the galaxy trembling. Entire fleets had been destroyed, planets scarred, and countless lives lost. The humans' heroics were already whispered across the stars, yet for her, the alien diplomat, it was more than legend. It was real. She had witnessed it with her own eyes, and it had changed her understanding of trust, courage, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. The war, however, was far from over. Enemy forces had retreated only to regroup, drawing from deeper reserves, assembling new technology, and forging alliances that threatened to plunge the galaxy into chaos once again. Entire sectors were under siege. Star systems that had once flourished were now barren, silent, and broken. And through it all, the human remained at the forefront, not as a general or a commander, but as a singular force of unyielding determination. Their next engagement was on the industrial planet of Korath 9, a world of towering factories and molten rivers of metal. The enemy had fortified their position, expecting the humans to falter. Yet when he arrived, leading a coalition of human and allied forces, he did not hesitate. His presence alone was a rallying point. Soldiers who had once quaked in fear moved with renewed courage, following him into the storm of fire and destruction. The battle was brutal. Energy blasts carved through the sky. Factory towers collapsed in chains of fire and molten debris, and alien troops pressed from all sides. Yet the human moved through it with uncanny precision. He predicted enemy maneuvers before they could be executed, countering strategies that would have shattered any conventional force. Every strike, every command, every decision was executed with calm authority, as though the chaos around him existed only to highlight his mastery. In one particularly harrowing moment, an alien war machine, a behemoth towering over city blocks, armed with weapons designed to level entire cities, advanced toward trapped civilians. The human did not pause. He analyzed the weapon, coordinated a strike with allied forces, and then engaged it directly. Sparks flew, metal screamed under the force of blows, yet he stood his ground, dismantling the weapon piece by piece, protecting lives that would have been lost without his intervention. She watched him in awe, her mind racing to understand how a single human could achieve what armies could not. He fought with precision, yes, but also with compassion. Unlike the alien commanders, whose victories were measured by numbers and conquest, his victories were measured by lives saved, by hope preserved, by the courage ignited in those who had once despaired. Even amidst the chaos, there were moments of quiet that revealed his humanity. Amid smoldering ruins, he would pause to tend to wounded soldiers, exchange a word of encouragement, or quietly observe a frightened child, offering reassurance without ceremony or expectation of recognition. These small gestures, juxtaposed with his extraordinary combat abilities, made him more than a warrior. They made him a symbol. As the battle drew to a close, the enemy forces had been decimated. Their retreat was chaotic, their morale shattered. Allied forces, though battered and bloodied, stood victorious largely due to the human's leadership and courage. And yet, when the smoke cleared, he did not celebrate. There was no boast, no grand proclamation. He simply moved to assist the wounded, coordinate repairs, and ensure that every life possible had been preserved. The alien diplomat found herself beside him, her thoughts heavy with realization. She had relied on him for peace, yes, but what she had witnessed went far beyond the fragile agreements and calculated strategies of diplomacy. This human had defied the impossible, reshaping the battlefield not just with skill, but with heart, determination, and unshakable courage. She finally spoke, her voice barely audible over the crackling fires. "I thought I understood humans," she said. "I thought I knew what you were capable of, but this is beyond anything I imagined." He looked at her, exhaustion etched into his face, yet his eyes remained calm, steady, unwavering. "It's not about imagination," he said. "It's about action. About doing what's right even when the odds are impossible. That's what humans do. That's what I do." She nodded, understanding finally settling within her. Peace was fragile, yes, but through him, through humanity, it was not only possible, it was achievable. She realized that the galaxy had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would be remembered for generations. A human who did not rely on gods, technology, or overwhelming force, but on courage, adaptability, and an unwavering commitment to what was right. And as the fires on Korath 9 smoldered and the survivors began the slow process of rebuilding, she understood a truth she could not have foreseen when the mission began. She had relied on a human for peace, and in doing so, she had seen him defy the impossible. The war had reached a fever pitch. Star systems burned as fleets collided in a symphony of destruction, alien weapons tearing through the void, and planets trembling under the weight of relentless bombardment. She had long ceased to be surprised by the human skill, but nothing could have prepared her for what awaited on the battlefield of Terrion Prime, the enemy's stronghold and the turning point of the war. Terrion Prime was a fortress world, its surface dominated by jagged mountains, massive towers, and energy fields that made traditional attacks nearly impossible. Enemy forces had massed here in unprecedented numbers, their commanders confident that even the human she had trusted for peace could not prevail. Entire fleets encircled the planet, ready to crush any who dared challenge their dominion. Yet he approached with calm certainty. There was no hesitation, no fear in his eyes, only a focus so intense it seemed to bend the chaos around him. Allied forces, numbering far fewer than the enemy, followed his lead, trusting him completely. Where generals hesitated, he acted. Where soldiers faltered, he inspired courage. The first wave of combat erupted above the planet's surface. Starships collided in fire and explosions, energy beams streaking across the blackness of space. Enemy fighters descended onto the cities while ground forces advanced, confident in their superiority. And yet time and again he outmaneuvered them. His instincts predicted attacks before they were launched. His strategies turned desperate situations into opportunities. His precision dismantled war machines that had been designed to withstand entire battalions. On the ground, she watched as he led a squad of human and allied soldiers through narrow streets filled with collapsing buildings and smoke. A massive alien dreadnought advanced, its weapons targeting civilians trapped below. Without hesitation, he charged into the inferno, weaving through debris, neutralizing threats, and guiding survivors to safety. Each movement was both elegant and deadly, a choreography of instinct, skill, and courage. Then came the ultimate confrontation. From the shadows of Terrion Prime's fortress emerged the enemy commander, a towering figure clad in technology that gave him strength and speed far beyond any ordinary soldier. Entire platoons had fallen before him, yet the human did not flinch. He advanced, exhaustion visible on his face, but resolve unbroken. The battle was unlike anything she had ever seen. Every strike from the human was precise, every counter flawless, every decision made in a heartbeat, yet with meticulous strategy. The commander's attacks were brutal and relentless, yet he adapted, predicting, evading, and striking with lethal force. He was not a mere soldier. He was a whirlwind, a storm incarnate, and yet his humanity never wavered. She saw him pause just long enough to protect an injured ally, dodge a strike that could have ended his life, and then continue the fight with renewed determination. He was extraordinary, yes, but it was his compassion, his willingness to risk everything for others that made him unforgettable. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The human endured blows that would have crushed the strongest alien warriors, yet he rose each time, relentless. When he finally struck the decisive blow, the enemy commander fell. Remaining forces scattered in panic, their morale shattered. The battlefield fell silent. Fires burned across Terrian Prime, smoke and ash drifting into orbit. Allies emerged from cover, looking at him not as a human, not as a soldier, but as a force of nature. She ran to his side, heart pounding, tears threatening to spill. "You did it," she whispered, voice trembling. "I relied on you, and you've done the impossible." He looked at her, exhaustion and relief mingling in his gaze. "It's never about doing the impossible for myself," he said. "It's about doing what's right. Every life matters. Every choice matters. That's why we fight. That's why we survive. That's what humans do." In that moment, she understood fully what she had witnessed. She had relied on a human for peace, yes. But what she had seen was something far greater. Courage beyond measure, resilience beyond comprehension, and humanity at its most extraordinary. He had defied the impossible, and in doing so, had shaped the fate of the galaxy. As survivors tended to the wounded and the last enemy forces fled into space, she realized that peace had been secured not just by strategy or diplomacy, but by the unwavering courage of a single human, willing to risk everything for others. And as they stood together, looking across the devastated yet surviving world, she understood the truth she could not have grasped when this mission began. Humanity was underestimated, not because it lacked power, but because no one could imagine the strength born from mortality, compassion, and unyielding will. The human she had relied on for peace had not only saved lives, he had inspired hope, reshaped alliances, and reminded the galaxy that the extraordinary could rise from the ordinary. And she who had trusted him from the start now knew that the impossible was not beyond reach when guided by courage and heart. The battlefield had finally fallen silent. Fires still smoldered across shattered cities, the scent of smoke and scorched metal hanging heavy in the air. Planets that had once been thriving civilizations now bore scars of war, yet amidst the ruin something extraordinary remained. Hope. Peace, fragile and hard-won, had been forged not through treaties or negotiations alone, but through courage, determination, and the actions of a single human who refused to surrender. She walked beside him, her steps careful over the debris-strewn ground, eyes taking in the devastation and the survivors emerging from hiding. He moved with exhaustion etched into his face, yet his posture remained steady, calm, and resolute. He was no longer simply a soldier or even a hero. He was a symbol of what humanity could achieve: courage, compassion, and unyielding strength. The human looked out across the horizon, where burning fleets and fractured cities met the stars. "It's over," he said softly. "For now. The galaxy can breathe again." She nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders, but she knew the peace they had won was more than the absence of war. It was the culmination of every decision he had made, every life he had saved, every impossible challenge he had faced and overcome. This peace had been earned in fire, blood, and courage. As survivors began to rebuild, tending to the wounded and salvaging what they could, she watched him move among them, not as a conqueror, not as a god, but as one of them. He helped lift fallen debris, guided the injured to safety, offered words of reassurance and encouragement. Every action, every gesture reflected the same humanity that had allowed him to defy the impossible time and time again. She finally allowed herself to speak the words she had carried inside for so long. "I relied on you to secure peace," she said, her voice trembling, "but I have witnessed something far greater. You've shown me humanity is stronger, braver, and more extraordinary than I ever imagined." He looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. "It wasn't just me," he replied. "We all fought together. Humans fight not because we are perfect, but because we refuse to give up. That's what makes us strong. That's what makes peace possible." For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves a moment of stillness. Stars shone above the ruined landscapes. Fleets drifted quietly in orbit, and the galaxy, for all its scars, could finally breathe. She reached for his hand, feeling the rough, battle-worn strength that had carried so many to safety. In that touch, she felt trust, admiration, and a bond forged in fire and courage, a bond far deeper than duty alone. As they stood together, gazing at the horizon, she understood fully the truth she had glimpsed throughout this war. Peace was fragile, fleeting and precious, but it was worth every sacrifice, every battle, every risk. And sometimes it was won not by words, treaties, or armies alone, but by those who had the courage to defy the impossible and the humanity to fight for others. She turned to him, her voice soft but steady. You have changed the course of the galaxy, not through power but through heart. I trusted a human for peace, and in return I have witnessed something extraordinary. He squeezed her hand gently. And we will keep moving forward, he said. Together. Humanity doesn't stop. We fight, we hope, we rebuild. That's what we do. The war was over, yet the story would live on, not as a tale of weapons or conquest, but as a testament to courage, resilience, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. The galaxy had witnessed a human defy the impossible, wield the power of courage and heart, and in doing so, had forged a legacy that would echo across the stars for generations to come. And as the sun rose over the war-torn world, casting light over ruins and survivors alike, she realized with certainty she had relied on a human for peace, and in return she had seen him achieve the impossible, and in doing so, had changed everything. The galaxy was not yet healed. Even though the war had ended, scars remained. Burned cities, fractured alliances, and planets struggling to recover from centuries of conflict. Yet amidst the ruin, hope began to grow. Survivors rebuilt their homes, fleets returned to orbit, and new councils were formed to maintain peace. The human she had relied upon for so much was at the center of this fragile renaissance, guiding not only armies but hearts and minds alike. The alien diplomat walked beside him through one of the newly liberated cities. Rubble and ash lined the streets, and the faint smell of smoke lingered, but she could see the beginnings of reconstruction. Children played cautiously among broken buildings, laughter and life returning slowly, as if daring the shadows of war to encroach again. She watched him interact with the citizens, helping them organize, sharing meals, and listening to stories of loss and survival. His strength was not only in battle but in leadership, compassion, and vision. He turned to her, eyes weary yet shining with determination. "This is what peace looks like after war," he said softly. "Not the absence of enemies, but the presence of hope. People rebuilding, living, and choosing to keep going. That's the hardest fight of all, and the one that matters most." She nodded, finally understanding the full scope of what she had witnessed. Her trust in him, initially a duty of diplomacy, had grown into admiration, awe, and something far deeper. The human spirit, she realized, was not measured by strength or skill alone. It was measured by courage, resilience, and the capacity to inspire others. Across the galaxy, ambassadors and leaders convened to form a new council for interstellar cooperation. He moved among them quietly, offering counsel and guidance, yet never seeking power or glory. Where others saw politics as a game, he approached it as he did battle, with integrity, clarity, and a sense of responsibility that left even the most seasoned diplomats in awe. On one particular day, the alien diplomat and he stood atop a rebuilt observatory, watching fleets glide silently above a city rising from ashes. The stars seemed clearer here, untouched by war, yet bearing witness to the lives lost and the battles fought. "You've changed everything," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Not through conquest, not through technology, but through courage and humanity." He smiled faintly, a hint of weariness in his expression. "I did what I had to do. People needed hope, and I had to fight for it. But it wasn't just me. Every human, every ally, everyone who refused to give up made this possible." In the months that followed, he continued to guide reconstruction efforts, mediating disputes between species who had long been at war, and inspiring a new generation of humans and aliens alike. His legend spread, not as a god, but as a human who had defied every expectation, fought like a warrior, and yet remained profoundly, undeniably human. She, too, found her place in this new era. No longer simply a diplomat assigned to monitor human actions, she became a partner, a confidant, and a witness to what humans could achieve. Together they traversed war-torn systems, encouraged rebuilding, and nurtured relationships between species who had only known hatred and conflict. Yet even as peace began to take hold, the galaxy remained vigilant. Old enemies lingered, shadows of ambition and vengeance ready to rise. And he, though exhausted, though human and mortal, stood ready. She had come to understand that this was his way, never yielding, never surrendering, facing impossible odds with courage and clarity. One quiet evening, as they looked across a planet slowly healing from war, she turned to him, I trusted a human for peace, she said softly. But what I've seen, it's more than I ever imagined. You've not just fought battles, you've inspired hope, rebuilt lives, and reminded the galaxy of the best of humanity. He took her hand, looking out at the horizon where the first rays of a new dawn touched cities and forests, scarred by war. We fight, we rebuild, and we protect. That's all any of us can do. And sometimes, even the impossible becomes possible when people refuse to give up. The galaxy, though wounded, had survived. And through one human's courage, resilience, and heart, she had witnessed the extraordinary. Peace had been won, not merely through treaties or diplomacy, but through trust, action, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. As the sun rose fully over the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of gold and violet, she realized that their story was only beginning. For the first time, the galaxy could look forward, not back, and she knew without a doubt that humans, mortal, fragile, and unassuming, could achieve wonders beyond imagination. And so, together they walked into the new era, a galaxy forever changed, not by gods or weapons, but by the courage and heart of one human who had defied the impossible. The galaxy had begun to heal, yet the echoes of war still lingered in the minds of its survivors. Planets once scorched were slowly being restored, and alliances forged in the crucible of battle were now stronger, tempered by trust, respect, and the shared memory of near extinction. She walked alongside him on a rebuilt bridge overlooking a newly thriving city on Vera 9. The skyline glimmered with lights, the hum of industry and life replacing the silence of destruction. Children ran through the streets, laughter rising above the distant hum of ships returning from patrols. For the first time in decades, there was a sense of true peace, a peace not imposed by fear or treaties, but earned through courage, sacrifice, and unity. He looked out over the city, his face calm yet bearing the weight of all he had endured. "We've done what few thought possible," he said quietly. "Peace isn't just the absence of war. It's the presence of life, hope, and trust. And it's fragile, but worth fighting for every day." She smiled, a deep, genuine smile that had grown through years of shared trials. "I relied on a human for peace," she said softly. "And I've seen more than strength or skill. I've seen courage, heart, and the kind of determination that can change worlds. You've shown me what humanity truly is." He turned to her, exhaustion mingling with a quiet pride. "It wasn't just me," he replied. "It was all of us. Humans, allies, everyone who refused to give up. That's how we survived. That's how peace became possible." The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, could breathe freely. Fleets no longer clashed in orbit. Cities were being rebuilt, and old rivalries were tempered by mutual respect. She realized that their mission, initially meant to secure a fragile alliance, had grown into something much greater. A new era where humans were no longer underestimated. A galaxy where courage and compassion held more power than weapons of war. In the weeks that followed, she and the human traveled between worlds, helping to mediate disputes, rebuild cities, and inspire hope. They encountered cultures still wary of humans, yet each time through deeds rather than words. They demonstrated that the strength of humanity lay not only in battle, but in its heart and will to endure. Finally, one evening, as twin suns set over a planet on the edge of the recovered sector, they paused to watch the horizon. The sky blazed in hues of gold and crimson, painting the ruins and rebuilt cities alike in warm light. For a moment, the galaxy was still, silent, peaceful, and alive. She took his hand, feeling the rough, battle-worn strength that had carried countless lives to safety. "The galaxy owes you more than I could ever say," she whispered. "You didn't just fight wars. You inspired hope. You showed the universe that humanity, even when fragile, can achieve the impossible." He smiled, a gentle, tired smile. "And you trusted me," he said simply. "Trust is what allowed it all to happen. Courage, hope, and trust. That's what changes everything." As the stars began to twinkle above, she realized the truth she had known for some time. Peace was not granted. It was earned, nurtured and protected by those willing to defy the impossible. They had faced the ultimate test, survived it, and now the galaxy could move forward, forever changed by the actions of one human who had stood unbroken amidst chaos and destruction. And in that moment, she knew the story had reached its true conclusion. The war was over. Peace, fragile yet enduring, had been secured, and the human she had relied upon for peace had done more than she could have ever imagined. He had defied the impossible, shaped the fate of worlds, and reminded the universe of the extraordinary potential of humanity. Together, they watched as a new era began, a galaxy alive with life, hope, and possibility, and she understood fully that sometimes the greatest power in existence was not in weapons, gods, or armies, but in the courage, resilience, and heart of a single human willing to fight for what was right. The story had ended, but its legacy, like the stars above, would shine forever.